So how this came about is telemarketers had what they called auto dialing systems. And telemarketers would load like a list of phone numbers into their data system. And then others had systems that would randomly generate telephone numbers. And some of these dialers could dial like literally tens of thousands of numbers an hour. So average everyday people were getting phone calls from telemarketers because of course that's how marketing works. And the last I checked, about a third of those people receiving those phone calls had what we call prepaid like SIM card type plans. So they were using this data and it was costing them more money because of random telephone calls kind of coming in when they didn't ask for them. Hello everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Hey, today as promised we're going to talk about a couple of different regulations or laws that may affect your business, but it certainly affects the third-party billing and debt collection industry. So today we'll talk about the TCPA, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, and we'll talk a little bit about the FDCPA, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. And hopefully by the time we finish up this video, you'll have a good understanding of what you may need to do from here to protect yourself from violations that could result in not practicing these two laws. So first let's talk about the TCPA. That's the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. And the purpose of the TCPA is to help cut down on the data usage for prepaid and regular plan like mobile devices. So how this came about is telemarketers had what they called auto dialing systems. And telemarketers would load like a list of phone numbers into their data system. And then others had systems that would randomly generate telephone numbers. And some of these dialers could dial like literally tens of thousands of numbers an hour. So average everyday people were getting phone calls from telemarketers because of course that's how marketing works. And the last I checked, about a third of those people receiving those phone calls had what we call prepaid like SIM card type plans. So they were using this data and it was costing them more money because of random telephone calls kind of coming in when they didn't ask for them. So like anything else, when something is being kind of, I'm a little reluctant to say this, but abused, then the government usually steps in to try to correct the problem. So the FCC is the enforcement agency of the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. So if you get a communication from them, then you probably have done something that is not in alignment with the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. So what does that require? The Telephone Consumer Protection Act requires that you get express consent from the consumer in order to reach out to them on those mobile devices. Now, originally it was just for telemarketers, but of course, billing and debt collection agencies, along with first-party people that are billing or collecting any receivables, are or could be subject to the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. So it is always best practice to get that express consent, but understand that the consumer can also withdraw that consent at any time, and they don't necessarily have to do it just in writing. They can verbally withdraw that as well. So most billing and debt collection agencies, because they are subject to these laws, will renew that consent on every single communication as a best practice. Now, something that doesn't normally affect first parties is the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. However, if a consumer has a pretty good attorney, in some cases, some first parties have been brought to court over what is clearly an FDCPA violation, and those consumers have been awarded a victory in a court of law. But the FDCPA, it's not an unreasonable set of laws. If you go out and do an internet search and you get the FDCPA, you read this simple set of laws that outline the requirements of communication with consumers when it comes to financial matters. One thing about the FDCPA is it really is reasonable. and it helps maintain a level of respect between a business and the consumers. But the FDCPA was meant to cut down on the harassment and abuse of consumers during these communications. So the overlap is with the TCPA. It covers both the marketing or sales industry, telemarketing specifically, but it also comes over into the billing and debt collection industry as well. So as a first-party business in a digital marketing age, it's always a good idea to get the express consent because you may want to come back later and remarket those individuals. But it also helps if at any point you have to hand off billing or debt collection matters to a third party because you already have that consent. But just know the third party billing and debt collection agency will obtain that consent after they are placed with their office. The FDCPA, again, I reiterate, it is mostly for third-party billing and debt collection agencies, but in some rare cases, it may apply to some first-party businesses. So it's always best to kind of adopt those rules into your everyday policies, procedures, and processes. But I think I've talked enough about that today. Next week, we will cover a couple of topics. I'm kind of on the fence on which ones I want to cover, but I think case law will be one of them. Because as a result of violations with the TCPA and the FDCPA, some areas that are a little gray require that some case law is established. So we'll talk about that next week. But as always, be safe, be well. Don't take any unnecessary risk, and I hope to talk with a lot of you soon. Take care. Hello, Sean Martin, Director of Business Engagement. So if you like this video, be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube. But don't forget to visit our website, check out the services we have to offer. Essentially, Partners Financial Services is a full-service accounts receivable management firm. So we specialize in billing, loan servicing, and debt collections. Some of the industries that we serve are the education industry, everything from a proprietary school all the way up to a college, university, higher educational level. Also banking, financial institutions, credit unions, and then a handful of miscellaneous industries that we do some debt collections for. So yeah, give us a call, send us an email, let us know what you have in mind, and we can see if our services can line up with your objectives and help you get in a better place than you are today.